Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We did it. We made it through another week, and now we're getting ready for Happy Hour. Happy Hour is a stream that we do on Fridays at 5 p.m., where we watch a real live woke presentation from start to finish. Now, this stuff isn't as crazy as the Socialism Saturday stuff that we see on Saturdays at 6 p.m., but it is a good little entryway into the land of the far left, because as we know, every crazy thing that we see happening on the far left trickles down from the socialist left through the institutions, through the schools, and eventually it kind of like normalizes itself a little bit in more polite society. So what we're seeing on Happy Hour is the impact of everything that the far left has done for years to shape our institutions, to shape our culture, to take over the schools. This is how it manifests itself in practical reality in the real world for things that people really do go to and really do pay money for, and then really do put on the internet. So if you have a couple of drinks and a snack, this is going to be a great time to bust them out. Let me show you what we are watching today. We are watching a presentation from Hampshire College. Now, does anyone know why Hampshire College might ring a bell? Can anyone here think of a specific thing that happened at Hampshire College in relation to me specifically? We're going to test everyone's memory here. You got to have a good memory if you're going to play in the world of the woke. Thank you, Jen, for the super chat. We didn't mean to make it through another week, but we did it. We fought the odds and won. Yes, we did, Jen. We did. Reagan in for the win. Yes. Hampshire College in Western Massachusetts was where I went undercover for my first ever in-person socialist event, the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference. back in April. I posted a video on YouTube afterwards saying that I felt like I had been in an episode of Socialism Saturday, and it really did feel that way. And Hampshire College is part of the 5 college system out there. That's UMass, that's UMass Amherst. What else? Oh gosh, Mount Holyoke. There are a couple other colleges out there that they have this kind of like consortium where, like, if you go to one college, you can access the resources at all the colleges. The reason I say that is that they're all uber woke. And University of Massachusetts is like one of the flagship universities in the state of Massachusetts, taxpayer funded, of course. And so anything that happens at Hampshire College is probably happening at these other colleges as well, is my point. So I revisited our friends at the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference today, accidentally, because I found out, guys, would you believe it? The people running the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference, which is called the Collective Power Conference, they blocked me on Twitter. I couldn't believe it. I don't know why. I didn't block them. I don't think I ever even mentioned them apart from going undercover at their conference and then writing about it on my Substack. I feel like I was very nice to the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference and they blocked me on Twitter, which of course meant that I had to go kind of dig into what was going on just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I found myself on Hampshire College's YouTube channel as a result of that. And on Hampshire College's YouTube channel was updated a few weeks ago to include a keynote from Zooey Zephyr. Does anyone know who Zooey is? Does Zooey ring a bell to anyone? Here's Zooey's Wikipedia page. Oh, no, you can't see it. Hang on. I set that up wrong. This is Zooey's Wikipedia page. Montana, yes, Prometheus, you know, trans from Montana. Let's read a little bit about how Zooey got in the news this year. Zephyr was a vocal opponent of multiple. First of all, this person is an elected state representative in Montana, of all places. So this is actually an elected official. Zephyr was a vocal opponent of multiple anti-LGBT bills introduced during the 2023 legislative session in Montana. During a floor debate on April 18, 2023, Zephyr admonished those who supported Senate Bill 99, which prohibited gender-affirming medical and surgical care for minors. She commented, "If you are forcing a trans child to go through puberty when they are trans, that is tantamount to torture, and this body should be ashamed." When this remark triggered an objection from the Republican Majority Leader Sue Vinton, Zephyr replied, "The only thing I will say is that if you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see blood on your hands." And yes, Zooey Zephyr is engaged to Aaron Reed. Aaron Reed has also blocked me on Twitter, but Aaron Reed did not block me on Substack Notes, where I actually find out a lot about what's going on the trans agenda from Aaron Reed, because she reports on that quite regularly. This prompted backlash from the House Republicans. The Montana Freedom Caucus issued a statement misgendering Zephyr and calling for her censure. Zephyr stood by her words, and House Minority Leader Kim Abbott defended her, describing the statement as blatantly disrespectful and the farthest thing imaginable from the commitment to civil discourse that the letter writers demanded. Thereafter, Speaker Matt refused to let Zephyr speak on any bills, despite no censure having taken place. So this person has caused quite a bit of controversy in the state of Montana. And this person, a couple weeks ago, took the plane ride out to Western Massachusetts, where she gave a talk for the Iqbal Ahmed Lecture at Hampshire College. This is on October 24, 2023. On October 19th, the 24th annual Iqbal Ahmed Lecture transgender politics in the U.S. streets and state houses took place at Hampshire College. In the spirit of this series honoring the late Hampshire professor, Montana Representative Zooey Zephyr addressed a timely topic with wide-ranging cultural implications, intersectional, anti-racist, transgender-affirming activism that extends from the streets to the state houses. That is what we are going to be watching today. Hopefully the sound is good. I tested the sound before the stream. It seems okay, but last week that didn't really seem to make a difference. So everyone keep their fingers crossed that we found a good one for today. That's what we're going to be doing. But before we get into that, guys, I do have a couple orders of business. Of course, number one, do make sure you are subscribed to my Substack. That is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. I am on a mission to get to 200 new paid supporters by the end of the year. That's 100 new paid supporters in the month of November, 100 new paid supporters in the month of December. If we wrap it up early, that would be great for me, because that would mean that I would get to stop telling you guys about it, and you would have to stop hearing about it too. So it would really be great for everyone. We are about, I think, like something like 65% of the way to the goal for November. So we're doing really well. We're on track. But as a reminder, this is what funds my work, not only for the rest of this year, but going into next year as well. So I have a lot of big plans for events I want to go undercover at, things I want to launch on the internet. The only way that I can achieve those things and continue to bring you investigative journalism and undercover journalism about what is going on the far left in this country that you are literally not getting anywhere else on the internet. The only way that happens is if you fund the work I'm doing by becoming a supporter for $8 a month or $80 a year. The vast majority of what I make gets reinvested back into the work I'm doing. Occasionally I buy yarn, I will admit, but I'm on stream, so you guys get to see that too. But occasionally I do buy yarn, because all of this costs money, guys. It costs travel money, it costs technology money. Most importantly, it costs my time. I spend an exorbitant amount of time watching woke trainings. I spend an exorbitant amount of time breaking them down, writing articles about them, making clips so people can understand them. All that stuff I tried to provide as much for free as I possibly can. And that is only possible when people step up and fund the work I'm doing. And I'm going to be very blunt. If I do not reach the goal I have by the end of the year, then I am going to be substantially cutting back the amount of time that I spend doing this, because you got to understand, every minute that I spend doing this is a minute that I'm not spending making money in another way. Okay, my time is a finite resource. This is what I want to be doing. This is what I think is important. I think we're exposing things that no one else on the internet is bothering to look at. But at the end of the day, I am not going to continue to fund this out of the Bank of Carlyn's savings account. Okay, so if people don't value what I'm doing, I don't have to do it anymore. I don't have to torture myself. I don't have to put all the time into doing this when I could be doing other things that would quite frankly make me more money and allow me to have a vacation every once in a while and keep the modicum of my sanity that remains. I don't have to do this. And so if people want me to continue to do it, if people want me to continue to dedicate the number of hours that I've been dedicating to this over the course of the last year, I have produced more content on this than almost anyone else in the space. And fact check me if you think I'm wrong. Point me to one other person in the space, and yeah, that includes James Lindsay, that has created more written and video content for you over the course of the last year. That includes original journalism, that includes undercover journalism, that includes news stories that popular conservative influencers steal and claim as their own, but were really the result of my undercover journalism. Point me to someone who's doing more, guys. If you want me to keep doing it, that requires stepping up. All I ask is $8 a month, $80 a year. If you value the work I'm doing and you want to see it coming, or continue to come rather, I'm more than willing to keep doing it, but I am no longer willing to fund it out of the Bank of Carlyn's savings account. So if you want to see that, you can sign up on the Substack, Carlyn.substack.com. You get access to a variety of perks. One of the best perks you're going to get access to is the biggest woke infiltration that I have ever done. We are infiltrating a multi-day, teacher training event that is one of the most woke events that I've ever seen. I'm not going to tell you what it is because then they would put up security measures to prevent us from infiltrating it. They would make it harder on all of us. Okay. What I want to do is go watch the event, go, maybe record the event live on the internet for you to watch. And the only way you're going to get access to the live feed of us recording the event live on the internet as it's taking place is by becoming a paid supporter on my Substack, because supporters are the only one that are going to get access to the live feed. This is a multi-day event. This is the biggest thing I've ever done. There's so much chance for error in this. It's not even funny, but I think we can pull it off. And the things I'm going to show you in this training, you are not going to see anywhere else. And I know what the schedule looks like for this thing. It's crazy. It's nuts. Some of the most social justice oriented far left things that you've ever seen. And remember, this is a teacher training program. So whatever is taught in this teacher training program is going to make its way into the classrooms that your kids are sitting in. If you want a preview of what's coming, I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you live. And I'm the only person on the internet that's showing you this stuff in its full form. All right. So again, head over to my Substack, carlin.substack.com. Sign up to support the work I'm doing. I really do appreciate it. And our last order of business before we get started is I need a beer. Does anyone else need a beer? I need a beer. Let me get my beers that I just got from the beer store. And then we have a tradition on the channel that on happy hour, you guys get to vote for the beer that I drink first. Naruto says, in case you missed it, the new House Speaker just publicly released the January 6 tapes. I did see that, Naruto. I actually have it up on my screen right now. There was a part of me that was like, why don't we just watch the January 6 tapes for happy hour? But that's like 40,000 hours worth of content. And I would prefer to let someone else watch it and analyze it and let me know what the important bits are. But yeah, it's all available on the internet. In fact, I have the link. I'll put the link in the chat. There's the link. I'll put it in the chat over on Rumble as well. There you go, Rumble. Hi, everyone watching on Rumble. I appreciate you guys as well. All right, let me get my beer. It is a sour kind of day in the land of New Hampshire. A sour beer kind of day. Well, most of the beers I drink on happy hour are sour beers because sour beers are the most fun beers. Let me see, which one do I want to start off with? Okay. If you don't think that you like beer, it's because you haven't found the right beer yet. I strongly encourage everyone to check out your local craft beer store, get adventurous, try some stuff. There's lots of great beers coming out. They're switching over to winter beers now. So you're going to get some good cinnamony, like dark options for that. Tayton says, off topic, maybe you saw a tweet asking pronouns must be a thing because it's destabilizing the gender binary and showing it's a performance. I don't know about that, Tayton. I did see that tweet. I don't have a good answer for you on it, which is why I didn't answer it. I'm going to have to think on that one, but I do appreciate the super chat. Thank you. All right, Sarah, I would argue that he's doing his job. Just because he did one thing correctly does not mean he's doing his job. The very first bill that he introduced was a bill for fucking Israel. So let's not give this new speaker too much credit. Just because he did the thing that already should have been done years ago doesn't mean he's doing his job. The first bill he introduced wasn't for the United States. It was for Israel. Anyway, let's talk about a far more fun topic, which is beer. Here's the beers I have today, and you guys are going to get to vote on which one I drink first. The first one is going to be from Great Nation Brewing. I saw this one in the beer store, and I couldn't remember if I had it or not already. It's a strawberry shortcake tart ale, 6%. And then I came home and I saw the can on my wall of beer cans that I have on the other side of this because I collect like the cool beer cans and I make a little decorative like wall out of them. So I have apparently had this. I don't remember it, but strawberry shortcake can't beat that. So that is our first one. That is from Great Nation Brewing Company. The next one we have is from Tailspinner Brewery. I've never had Tailspinner Brewery before, but it is an apple pie beer with a unicorn on it. So it looks a little fruity in more ways than one. This is an anicorn apple pie fruited sour. And apparently this is made with real apple cider. So that's good. I like apple cider as much as the next person. Let's see. It has apple, cinnamon, ginger, and nutmeg. It had a dry effervescence, loads of apple with warming baked pie spices. Anicorn's namesake was known for tart wit and everyday miracle making with silky locks of silver. This fruited sour series honors all whose memories live on in bursts of light and color. Apple pie beer. That's choice number 2. Choice number 3, we're going with Out of Order Brewing Company. Now, this is like one of my new favorite brewing companies for like really delicious smoothie style beers. These beers are rich. They are fruity. They are delicious. This is like a dessert style beer. I'm slowly but surely making my way through their collection. This one is called It Wasn't Easy. And it is brewed with copious amounts of pineapple juice, coconut, lemon lime, pastry cream, and lactose. So we're calling this one the Pina Colada beer because I'm betting this tastes like a pina colada, and that's from Out of Order Brewing Company. And the last one on our sour series today, I've had a couple beers from this one. This is Drecker Brewing Company, and they also do these like smoothie style dessert beers, but like a little creepy on the can designs as well. This one is called Brains, and it is a blackberry lemon apricot double fruited smoothie sour. I got to be honest, I almost didn't buy this because I'm a little bit, the blackberry I'm on board with, the lemon I'm on board with, the apricot I'm kind of like, I don't know how that's going to work out. But then I looked at the back of the can, and apparently it also has lactose and vanilla. And I like beers with lactose because it makes them thicker. And I like beers with vanilla because I like vanilla beans. And so I was like, why not just give it a try? That's going to be our last option. So guys, I'm putting the poll in the chat over on YouTube. And you get to vote for which one I drink first. Are we doing strawberry shortcake? Are we doing apple pie? Are we doing pina colada? Or are we doing blackberry lemon? Let me know in the chat which one you would like me to drink first. And in the meantime, I will get the sound set up for our happy hour today. If you have never been to happy hour before, welcome. We're really glad you're here. If you're drinking something fun in the chat, let us know what you're drinking today. Doesn't have to be alcoholic. It could be like, a virgin, daiquiri or a water or a nice herbal tea. You don't have to drink alcohol with us hooligans. Guys, everyone, please do make sure to mount that like button for me. Mounting the like button allows YouTube to know that you're enjoying the stream, and maybe they'll recommend it to other people because YouTube is really burying the hell out of my channel lately. And it would really help me out if people could start mounting that like button. There's a shocking disparity between the number of people who are watching right now and the number of people who have mounted that like button. So I would like to see that number go up, 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 up. As a reminder, I do stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Saturdays, we go live for Socialism Saturday. Tomorrow, we're doing the second half of that Women's Socialism Conference, which was great last week. I still have many clips I want to make from that one that I haven't gotten around to yet. Maybe I'll do that after the stream today. Bot fornicated with the like button. Bot, the Groypers are going to judge you for that. I can't believe you fornicated with the like button, bot. How dare you? How dare you? If you don't want to fornicate with the like button, you can put your arm around the like button. You can hold the like button's hand. You can give the like button a kiss on the cheek. We just don't smash the like button on this channel. No sloppy teenage sex on this channel. Come on, we're better than that. Kurt says, I'm drinking of the well of woe, the spring of repercussion. Well, Kurt, I send you positive kisses. Positive kiss, not positive kisses. I saw bots tweet at the same time, and I said that's where kisses came from. I meant positive vibes, positive vibes, positive vibes. I'll give Kurt blowing of a kiss for the well of woe. There we go. All right, let me see, which one did you guys vote for? Apple pie. Apple pie it is. Let's see. I like Drew. I appreciate Drew's sass in the chat. Drew, I think you're relatively new, right? I'm Mormon. I soaked with the like button. I love it, Drew. I love it. All right, hang on. Let me get this beer poured. Milo, the like button set me up with her sister. Well, congratulations, Milo. I hope her sister doesn't turn out to be trans. You never know these days. You never know. All right, I got my apple pie beer. This does look like apple pie, doesn't it? Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. Oh, it definitely smells like apples, I'll tell you that. All right, let's get started. We are watching Zooey Zephyr at Hampshire College. Pray for us. Someone, can a Groiper please pray the rosary for us? All right, let's do it.
Thank you for participating in the 24th Annual Eqbal Ahmad Lecture, Transgender Politics in the U.S. Streets and the State Houses. I offer a special welcome to Julie Diamond, Eqbal's wife, and Dora Ahmad, his daughter, joining us via Zoom along with other attendees from around the world.
Good sound.
And I eagerly
Who would have
welcome
thunk it?
all of the members of our campus community and those from the 5 colleges in the Valley who have come to participate. I am grateful to the Eqbal Ahmad Committee, including Margaret Cerullo and Amy Jordan, for their creativity in envisioning the topic for the lecture and their leadership in planning. Thank you to Sheila Lloyd, Beth Madison, and Doug Koziel from the Division of Justice, Equity, and Anti-Racism for creating an inspiring and timely program for the community.
They have a Division of Justice, Equity, and Anti-Racism at Hampshire College. Let's just think about that for a moment. They have a whole division for justice, equity, and anti-racism. When I was strolling around their website today, I also did notice that they had a whole program in queer studies that you can major in at Hampshire College.
Community Day of Learning today, along with organizational support for this event. Kathy Hughes devoted a substantial time to logistics and contracts for this event. I'm grateful. And finally, thanks to John Bruner and Tyler Ortiz for their extensive and generous technical assistance setting up for the filming of this lecture. This endowed lectureship honors the teaching, scholarship, and activism of the late Eqbal Ahmad, a longtime Hampshire College professor. Professor Ahmad's faculty colleagues, former students, family, and friends from around the globe joined together to make this lecture series a continuing celebration of his life and work. It's an enduring legacy that honors the principles of the man for whom it is named, inspires us to reflect on the teacher's impact, and underscores the opportunity and obligation every educator has to make a difference for students, to infuse scholarship with activism, and to pursue justice. This lectureship brings to Hampshire College and our community distinguished scholars, political figures, activists, and artists engaged with questions of social justice and social movements in both the United States and the post-colonial worlds in which Eqbal was engaged. Today's program exemplifies that mission. As a witness to global conflict, Eqbal devoted his life's work to writing, teaching, and above all else, working for change. Eqbal was a participant in and witness to some of the most harrowing times and political struggles of the 20th century. The partition of India and Pakistan and its legacies, the Algerian Revolution, the Vietnam War, Middle East conflict, and the First Gulf War. His experience, his commitment to activism, his scholarship, all represent Hampshire College at its best. Part of this legacy is the astounding list of speakers that have visited Hampshire College to lead this lecture series, like Arundhati Roy, Noam Chomsky, Judith Butler, Howard Zinn,
all
Edward
socialists,
Said, Kimberly Crenshaw,
all socialists,
Rashid Khalidi, Michelle Goodwin, Dorothy Roberts, and 3 co-founders of Black Lives Matter, Patrice Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi. Today,
wow.
Zooey Zephyr joins this lineage. No pressure at all. Finally, I ask everyone to join us, to take a moment to recognize Professor Margaret Cerullo, who is retiring this year. She has been the driving force behind this amazing speaker series, which is but a small aspect of her extraordinary contributions to Hampshire College. So thank you, Margaret. And that's just you.
Oh, is she giving a speech? Oh, great.
Thank you. That was very moving. Well, for a new generation of students and for others who have perhaps not attended prior Ekbal lectures, I thought it would be important to explain why, almost 25 years after his death, his friends and former colleagues continue to celebrate and commemorate Ekbal with this lecture. And why, especially since October 7th, not a few of us have joined the refrain, if only Ekbal were here. Why?
Wow. Why would Ekbal be very excited about what happened on October 7th? Does anyone have any guesses about why they wish that Ekbal would still be alive to see what happened on October 7th? Does anyone want to take a gander of why that might be in the chat? What a way to start off with. I wonder what she's going to say next. But I want to see if there are any guesses in the chat about why that's significant. Is she insinuating that Ekbal, the namesake of this lecture series at Hampshire College, is she insinuating that Ekbal might be excited about the revolution? Maybe it's the revolution. Could it be the revolution? All right, let's find out.
Along with his friend Edward Said in the 1980s, Ekbal met off the record with Israeli and American.
This was on October 19th. This was a couple weeks ago. So this was after Hamas hang glided into Israel, is what they're saying for people who don't know.
American Jewish leaders who were puzzled about Palestinian intentions and the persistence of Palestinian resistance to Israeli practices. According to Said, Ekbal was the one person who consistently was able to communicate honestly with them, and while they disagreed, emerge with mutual respect. Why? Because Ekbal, I believe, saw the clash between Israelis and Palestinians as a tragic clash. In his memorable phrase, between two communities of suffering. Also, Edward Said, upon Ekbal's retirement, pointed out that all of his writing was scattered to the four winds, and he urged him to gather it so that future generations would know of his brilliance, of his preternaturally, if that's a word, incisive analyses of global politics. And I would add his preternaturally prescient analyses of global politics. So one of my purposes today is to encourage you all to read the collective works of Ekbal Ahmad, which one copy I believe is available here, but I checked and it is in all of the 5 college libraries. And I am willing to send anyone PDFs of the distinct sections of the book or the entire book. And very briefly, I will tell you what the book is about. And I think you'll have some idea of why it's still relevant. But first, I want to tell you, as Ed indicated, Ekbal was present for some of the most important events of the 20th century. And I want to alert you to the story of his experience in the partition is captured in a BBC documentary called Stories My Country Told Me. So you can access that online, and Ekbal Ahmad on the Old Trunk Road. But the two new things I learned this year about Iqbal, aside from the fact that he knew Gandhi as a 12-year-old, he was Gandhi's assistant and traveled throughout the Indian subcontinent
That's actually pretty
with
crazy.
him. He also knew and collaborated, worked closely with Frantz Fanon during the Algerian Revolution. He also collaborated on the great film, the great revolutionary film of the 20th century, The Battle of Algiers. But these, so that he was part of the anti-Vietnam War movement, the Black Civil Rights movement. Every now and again, you will read things like, in a small town in Tennessee or somewhere in the US South, today there were arrested 5 Black Americans and 1 Pakistani. Now you know who that 1 Pakistani was. Also, Iqbal in the 70s was accused by J. Edgar Hoover of a plot to kidnap Henry Kissinger and blow up the heating systems in
What?
federal buildings.
What? Did you hear the cheer?
That headline
Wow.
was 4 radical Catholics and 1 Pakistani. So, but this year I learned 2 new things about Iqbal. One was that he was friends with Malcolm X, and that when he was at Princeton studying for his PhD, he invited Malcolm to speak at the first non-African American institution in the US where Malcolm X spoke. And then he showed up in the 2000s as an influence, before there were influencers, in a feminist genderqueer arts journal.
What?
A little known story with which I will end my remarks. But now I'm going to tell you very, very briefly about the sections of the book so you can request them, and I hope you're motivated to see them. The first is Revolutionary Warfare and Counterinsurgency, about which he was the preeminent expert from a critical perspective.
Really?
And that section of the book includes a very, very important piece, which I'll return to in a minute, how to tell when the rebels have won.
Oh, really?
Another piece in that section, radical but wrong, his critique of Che Guevara and Regis Debray's Foucault theory. Also, a piece called The Making of the Battle of Algiers, which he actually delivered as a lecture in a Hampshire class that he and Carol Bengelsdorf and I co-taught before he left Hampshire. The student evaluations for that course, favorite part of the course, Iqbal. Least favorite part of the course, when Iqbal left. That's only the first section. I promise I'll go more quickly. Section 2, Third World Politics, Pathologies of Power, Pathologies of Resistance, in which he examined post-colonial systems of power and the roots of the religious.
I think we're starting to all understand why she thinks that Iqbal might have been very excited by the events of October 7th.
Right in the post-colonial world. Section 3, on the cusp of the Cold War, with his really important analysis of the Cold War from the standpoint of its victims. Section 4, the Palestine-Israeli conflict, which is unmatched, and I really commend it to you in these days. And finally, a section on South Asia, including his great piece on Afghanistan, Bloody Games, which really predicted the mess the US would get itself in if it intervened in Afghanistan. I want to tell you one more thing about Iqbal. In the spirit of our land acknowledgements, Iqbal came to the US for the first time in the 50s on a Rotary scholarship to Occidental College, where he wrote probably one of the first works by a non-Native scholar on Native American resistance to settler colonialism. Iqbal told me that when he first arrived to the US and saw cowboy and Indian movies, he always identified with the Indians. Why? They always were portrayed as an elemental enemy arriving in screaming hordes with no history, no family ties, no hopes, fears, or grievances. And it was those histories, those hidden or disavowed histories of Native American life and resistance that Iqbal sought to capture in his undergraduate thesis. Later, he wrote a really important article called Political Culture and U.S. Foreign Policy, in which he argued that Indian fighting was the template for U.S. foreign policy. Smoke them out, wipe them out, mow the grass. I promise I'll compress. So now I'm going to tell you about where Iqbal appeared in the feminist genderqueer arts journal, which you can also look up online.
Zoe's like, I'm
It's
ready for
called
my turn now.
LTTR, like letter without the E's. Oh, you know it. Teal knows it. Good for you, Teal. I should have known that. Number 5 of LTTR is called Positively Nasty. And that's where Iqbal's How to Tell When the Rebels Have Won appears with a commentary by Emily Royston, his former student. This is how she introduces the piece. I am writing between great and radical influences. My one true hero, Iqbal Ahmad, and my experiences in contemporary feminist genderqueer life to declare the necessity of their coalition. I write to explicitly align this community of readers with the tumultuous potential of my mentor's 1965 treatise on revolutionary war.
You should know the answer to this. I'm not going to answer this. You should know the answer to this.
Warfare. So I hope that's an enticement. It's very easy to find. I was able to find it, and I'm not good at these things. So finally, I'm going to speak to you as students as if Iqbal were here. The greatest rewards of teaching, he said, are all those students, present or former, who take risks in the pursuit of a just and moral order, crossing boundaries and breaking barriers of ideology and conformity. When asked in an interview what advice he would give to students, he responded, number 1, read. Number 2, intervene. For God's sake, let us not be only consumers of information. Each person has some truth, some knowledge, some understanding of the world that is different from that of the dominant media institutions. The moment that you find that your truth clashes with what is being peddled as their truth, intervene. And that seemed an excellent segue to today's speaker, Representative Zooey Zephyr from Montana, who will now be further introduced by Dana Ahern. Thank you.
Oh, another fucking introduction. God damn. I bet I met some of those students at the Reproductive Justice Conference. Hang on.
Hello.
Fish Addict, you once tried to embarrass me on my own show by asking why it seems like I don't like you. So I'm going to state this explicitly. You have been in my streams for years. I have answered this question almost every single day for months. You have heard the answer to this question, and you're not fucking listening. If you wonder why I give you the cold shoulder so much, that you try to embarrass me by sending in a super chat to Nothing Remotely Controversial to have Joshua do a reading on it, and I tell you explicitly when you do that, the reason that I give you the cold shoulder is because you don't fucking listen, and it is frustrating when people show up to my streams all the time and don't fucking listen, and then you continue to argue when you're being given the answer in the chat by the people who do listen. You should know the difference between trans and queer. If you don't know the difference between trans and queer, it's because you're not listening. There should be no confusion here, bro. It's literally the title of the stream. Look at the title of the stream that you're watching. I labeled it that way for a reason.
And welcome to you all today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dana Ahern. I'm a visiting assistant professor of queer. Oh, is it not? Is this? There you go. Thank you. I'm visiting assistant professor.
Does anyone who pays attention in my chat want to answer Fish Addict's question? Why is Zooey so often labeled trans when she is in fact queer? Golly gee, Fish Addict, I don't know. Could it be that the left plays language games to try to co-opt music movements specifically for the purpose of confusing you? Why on earth would the left label something with one label when they really mean another label? It's only the thing that we talk about literally every day. I just am so confused about why the left would say one thing when they really mean another thing, bro. I just don't understand it. The reason she's labeled as trans is because queer Marxists co-opted the legitimate LGBT movement, which includes normal trans people. Zooey is also technically trans as in transition because Zooey went from being a man to, I believe, a woman. But that doesn't actually mean that she's also not a queer Marxist because she's obviously and clearly a queer Marxist. I spend the first hour of every stream fucking repeating myself for the umpteenth time because people who come to my stream almost every single day don't listen.
Professor of Queer Studies here at Hampshire. I have the honor of introducing our esteemed guest here today, Representative Zooey Zephyr. The United States, and indeed the world, has entered what can only be called an interesting moment in time. An influx of increasingly violent legislation, like anti-trans bathroom bills, began in the early 2010s, foreshadowed something darker to come with the election and subsequent politics of the 45th president. Since that time, we've seen legislative attacks on queer and trans people reach an all-time high. Gun violence, which had been on the decline, reached a steady increase since 2014. And attacks on education that try to prevent students from learning about racism, colonialism.
By the way, I want to say this. For anyone who's new here, I don't mind if new people ask questions. I know the difference between new people and the people who are here all the time and participating all the time. So if you're new or you don't chat in regularly and you want to ask a question, you're perfectly entitled to ask a question. I have no problem repeating myself for the umpteenth time to answer questions for new people. Where I start to get a little bit annoyed is when I have to answer questions for people who have been here almost every single stream for literally years because they don't listen the first 8,000 times I answered the goddamn question. That's where I get annoyed. But if you're new, I don't mind repeating myself for new people.
Sexuality and gender have reached new heights. However, with these attacks too come opportunities for resistance, for refusals, and for courage. We're not unfamiliar with that resistance here at Hampshire, as we welcome a cohort of students from New College of Florida who so intimately understand.
So you guys know how New College, and we talked about this a lot this week because we streamed a lot of content from alt liberal arts. So a lot of the students that after the conservative takeover of New College in Florida, there was a whole cohort of students who actually transferred to Hampshire College specifically.
These students so intimately understand what is at stake during this political moment. And neither too does our guest today, Representative Zephyr. Representative Zephyr is the first trans woman to be elected to the Montana legislature in 2023, representing Missoula in an otherwise strongly Republican-held state. She was banned from the House floor following debates around Senate Bill 99, insidiously titled the Youth Health Protection Act, meant to prohibit transgender children from accessing gender-affirming care. Representative Zephyr alongside other recent examples like Representatives Justin Jones and Justin Pearson of Tennessee, were expelled from the Tennessee House of Representatives for protesting gun violence, follow a legacy of radical legislators who speak back to these attempts at legislative and imperial violence. We're reminded too of Representative Julian Bond, who was unconstitutionally banned from his seat of the Georgia legislature because of his vocal anti-imperialist stance, speaking back against the US war in Vietnam in 1965. As Representative Zephyr stated in her opposing remarks on the bill, if you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see blood on your hands. Representative Zephyr bravely points us to the significance of these attacks on all of our lives, the importance of understanding that these issues are not in isolation from one another, and we must fight back and refuse to be curtailed by these acts of violence. Please join me in welcoming today Representative Zooey Zephyr as she presents her lecture. They say get back, we say fight back, transgender politics in the US streets and state houses.
I'm surprised they're not snapping. Usually they would snap.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that introduction and the slew of introductions and the mini lecture on Iqbal Ahmed. I feel just so honored to be here with all of you today. I want to start this conversation with what has been the most common question I have gotten since the Montana legislature adjourned in May, which is, are you okay? How you holding up? And every time I wrote a public statement in the legislature, I signed it with pride and determination. And I stand before you today feeling both of those things, my heart swelling with both of those things. And I feel, quite frankly, more hope than I had felt in a long time following the legislature. And that can be a weird thing to say in a moment where I was booted out of the legislature, in a year where over 500 bills targeting our community have come before the state houses.
She wasn't booted out of the legislature. She just wasn't allowed to speak on the floor, which, to be honest, I don't actually agree with that. I think it's antithetical to like the political process. But like, let's just be clear. It's not like she lost her seat or anything. She just wasn't allowed to grab a microphone and grandstand
Across the country. And so I want to talk sort of in long, how do you get there? What was the path that led me to politics? What was I seeing in the legislature, and how can you come out of an experience like that sort of on fire with hope? And for me, I want to talk about initially, how did I get into the legislature? And how that began is, like a lot of people, I saw community suffering. I came out and, like many people in the trans community, I was not accepted by my family. And my city of Missoula took care of me deeply and fully. I had faculty. I worked at the university, and my boss changed our bathroom to a gender neutral bathroom within 2 weeks of me coming out. I taught dance. I taught Lindy Hop in town, and I had, farm hands coming.
This is helpful. So Reagan Wolf, not to be confused with our other precious Reagan. I live in Zephyr's district, and she hosted a queer prom for high schoolers. Let me know if you have any questions about her. I may be able to answer. Thank you, Reagan Wolf. We appreciate that.
Coming in with their partners, teaching dance, being like, if anyone gives you trouble, like, you let them know that we've got your back. And so my community supported me. And that, after a while, that leads you in your heart for saying, how do you help? What does that look like? And I remember meeting with a dear friend of mine, Zooey Moreno, who worked intermittently with the ACLU of Montana and was an activist, radical activist in their own right.
Radical means
and I
socialist.
Sat down with them and I said, what do you like? How do you get involved? Like, I've got this skill set. I want to do something. How do you get from this place of experience and desire to help into helping? And they, much wiser than I felt at the time, just said, moment will show up. You'll know. Just be ready to do something. Step in when the time is there. And I sort of wound up doing community activism, helping people. There was a trans teen who was a 14-year-old trans boy in a choir class in rural Montana at a school that when the school tried to start a GSA, parents showed up with AR-15s and prayed outside of the halls of the school. Yeah.
Good parents.
This student came out, young trans boy at 14, and the response was half of his choir class dropped the class because they did not want to sing with a trans student. The other half took care of him. And we got a call.
That's a little
from
bullshit.
his
They
mother,
shouldn't have done that.
and they
Hang
said,
on.
Hey, can you show some sign of support?
Listen, this is why we need to differentiate between trans and queer. First off, when kids are doing this stuff in school, they might I'm not one of those people that says trans people don't exist. I think trans people do exist. I just think they're extremely small in number. And so when you're dealing with this stuff in school, I think when kids are quote kids are victims of this ideology. Kids are not when kids come out as trans or queer in school, I don't think that ridiculing them does any good. I don't think that making fun of them or saying, I don't want to be around you. I actually think that makes the problem worse. It doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. They're doing this a lot of times. I do believe that there are legitimately trans people, and I don't believe they should be medicalizing until they're at least 18, ideally older. But even for the ones that are not that it's more of a social contagion, that they're buying into the ideology, it's because they want attention, they want to feel loved, they want to feel appreciated. And it's if you make fun of them, you're going to make them double down into the ideology, and you're just going to radicalize them even more. And so I don't agree with this tactic of someone comes out as trans or queer in school and parents convince students to quit the class because they don't want to be around it. That's bullshit. I'm sorry. They don't have fucking cooties. No one's gonna this is not a communicable disease or anything like that. And so I think that type of strategy actually makes things worse. I don't think it makes it better. Trans adults are not the enemy. I've known several trans people over the years who are very nice people. It's Marxists who are the enemy. That's exactly right. Queer is a far left political ideology. There are a lot of normal trans people in the world that just want to be happy and live how they want to live, and they don't care about any of this far left bullshit. We need to welcome the normal trans people, because they're some of our greatest, dare I say, allies in fighting back against the social contagion bullshit.
And we rolled up with about 15 trans adults to say, hey, I know it's hard in high school for a lot of reasons, it's especially hard for you, but look, we make it. We're out on the other side, not just having survived, but being pillars of our community and loved by our communities. And if you can make it, you'll be there too. Did a lot of different work, helping file discrimination claims. I briefly worked tracking the movements of armed neo-Nazis during George Floyd protests, and felt a lot of sort of the necessity of intersectionality in those moments. When you look at the way that when it came to the George Floyd protests, all of the security in Montana were the community security was the queer community. And then when protests were being organized by the queer organizers, our security was the BIPOC community.
No shit.
And so seeing the way...
Jeff, you went to China? Did they ass rape you at the airport to find out if you had COVID? Because I know that's an awful way to ask that, but I was actually supposed to go to China before COVID. This big China was gonna bring me over to do HR talks, and they were gonna cart me all around China. And of course they kept pushing it back with COVID, and they kept canceling and pushing it back, and it reached the point where eventually I was I emailed them. I was I don't think I can come to your country. Because I was I don't want to get ass raped at the airport, and I was like, if I go to China, I am never getting out alive. Oh no, thank God, Jeff made it through without incident. Okay, I'm happy to hear that, Jeff.
That we were lifting each other up. gave me hope, and that led quickly to working on policy for the city of Missoula, which is my home. And the interesting thing about activism is you are sort of patching the wounds that are left by government. Some of those wounds are intentional. There are people in positions of power who want to hurt communities. Whether they realize it or not, they are crafting policies that directly hurt communities. And sometimes you are patching the unintentional wounds of government. Government is an imperfect entity, and every policy will leave some potential harm for folks. And the issue we found in 2020, or that I found in my heart, was the wounds were coming too fast. We had COVID, we had the George Floyd protests, we had the rise of anti-abortion policy, we had the rise of anti-LGBTQ policy, and suddenly it felt too much. And when it was too much, I said, what the hell is my government doing? I'm going to go bang on the door a little bit, and testified before the legislature.
Well, not in Missoula. Listen, guys, I know that people in red states believe that they're safe from this stuff, but socialists are proactively organizing in red states because they've got the blue states locked down. Now they're moving on to the red ones. That's how you get this. Zephyr left her wife and son when they transitioned. She also has a history of posting things about autogynephilia on Twitter. She's also a furry. Oh, that's nice. I don't judge furries. People like what they like, whatever.
Testified before the governor's office and was met with a room of people who, when community showed up and said, we are suffering from the laws you design, they plugged their ears and said, we don't want to hear it. And I did what any reasonable human being would do and said, well, if you're not going to listen to me from the outside, I'm going to bang the door and I'm going to get on the inside. And I sat down with my senator at the time, Senator Bryce Bennett, and I said, hey, I asked an important question. I said, I've got this list of skills, working at the university, being connected to the community in all these different ways. Is this a room that my voice can do good in? And what?
Oh my God. Maybe her name is Zoe. Maybe she picked the name Zooey because she's a furry. Wow. Mind blown. Mind blown, bot. Thank you for that gift.
Senator Bennett said to me was, not only is it a voice your room can do good in, it's the room you need to be in right now. It's the room your voice can do the most good in. And so I ran and knocked just an obscene amount of doors, and was blessed to be elected to represent the 100th district in Montana. Now, one of the questions I often get is, did you realize that things were going to get as bad as they were going to get this quickly? And campaigning in Missoula, no. I was having one-on-one conversations with folks, Republicans and Democrats, who by and large had 1,000 different things that they cared about. Very low on the totem pole was hurting LGBTQ people. And then I got to the legislature, and I decided that I was going to try to do a diary on TikTok of sort of my experience. And the first video on my TikTok way back at the beginning is an hour before orientation for all the legislators. And I said, we'll find out. I'm scared, I'm excited. We'll find out what it's like. And we showed up and we elected our leadership for the minority party, the Democrats. And the Republicans were electing the Speaker of the House. And I heard that it was a race between a far-right candidate and a more moderate Republican. I say moderate Republican. He had every day he wore his "Don't Tread on Me" pin, so slightly more moderate Republican. But the far-right candidate from the back channels that we heard was running on a campaign of he would lock me out of the restrooms in the Capitol.
Really?
He was elected by 2 votes.
Wow.
Later that day,
It's a little
there was a closed-door meeting with him and all of the Republican women about what to do about the trans person in office. So I knew very quickly what the stakes were. Now, I also knew that not everyone was like that. There was a 21-year-old Republican woman who was telling me, hey, here's the conversations happening about you. Here's what they're trying to do. It's very scary. Like, if you need support, let us know. But I knew very quickly what they were what the stakes were and what they were trying to do. I also learned very quickly that you have to stand up to that right away. And the second day of orientation, I walked up to the speaker and I said, hey, I'm hearing this stuff. We're not going to have a problem, are we? Because it's going to get real bad real fast if you're going to lock a legislator out of a bathroom. And I said, you know, that doesn't play well. You know, it's going to look stupid. You know, that's not why we were sent here. And he said, yep, I agree. We're not going to do anything. Don't worry about it. And by and large, they didn't. They put a lock on the entire bathroom so that if someone were scared of me, boo, by the way, they could lock all like 30 stalls and stay by themselves in the bathroom. And I think the social pressure of how stupid that looks wound up working. And
That is actually pretty stupid.
Yeah, and this is sort of the dichotomy.
I'm gonna say this. I had to use like a unisex bathroom at the socialism conference. And what they did at the socialism conference was they just took down all the signs. Like, they were men's and women's bathrooms, but they just took down all the signs. So you didn't know when you were going in the door whether or not it was a man's or a women's bathroom. And I'll tell you this, I walked into one of those bathrooms and it was the men's bathroom because I saw the urinals and it smelled different. And I walked right the fuck back out. I was like, I'm not using this. I don't care if it's gender neutral. And I went in the other one and it was the weirdest thing in the world to be like in what was formerly the women's room, which smells so much better than the men's room, by the way, like to like an infinite degree. And like to come out of the stall and just see like a man there, it's the weirdest thing in the world. But is it the end of the fucking world? No, it was weird. I didn't like it, but I didn't feel like I was in danger. It was just like a weird thing. It was just like, it was like, eh. But like, it's something that the reason I bring that up is I'm acknowledging the weirdness of it when it first happens. But at the same time, I want to say that like, if that was really the biggest thing on the docket of what the Republican speaker was thinking about, yo, you got to get some priorities, man. Truly and sincerely. Like, it is far more offensive to me to walk into to use a bathroom with like a row of urinals than it is to use a bathroom without urinals in when I may occasionally see a man in the bathroom. It was still weird. But like, just keep the fucking urinals out of the fucking bathroom, and that's all that I want, really. The minute they start putting urinals in the women's room is the minute I go on goddamn strike. Then we can have the conversation. They do legitimately stink. They smell very, very different than women's rooms. Like, notice of like from the moment you open the door, it's like, nope, no, not doing it. Carlin, for me, it's like realizing you're driving the wrong way on a one-way street. That was kind of what it felt like, Jeff. When like the first time that I was in the gender neutral bathroom and I came out and I saw like an old man with a beard, I was like, it was legitimately weird. Legitimately weird.
Of what you see on the front and what happens in the back, because on the back end, you know, you have long sessions where you're spending hours and hours on the floor. You get up and you go use the restroom. And of course, I'm in there with a dozen different Republican women and we're just talking, having a great time. How's your weekend? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And then you go back out and they're like, anyways, these LGBTQs, super dange. So you see that as like the entry point. And then you watch bill after bill after bill show up in Montana and show up across on legislatures across the country, carbon copies of legislation brought by national organizations that are trying to harm us. And I think when it comes to like hoping and feeling that hope, one of the things I often say is the first step of that is not averting your eyes from the reality of what we are facing. The LGBTQ community right now, and trans people in particular, are facing efforts of eradication. Michael Knowles said it at CPAC. The goal was eradication of trans people from public life entirely. That is the aim. Speaking more broadly or more specifically about that, we saw policies designed to erase trans people's pasts, their presents, and their futures. When you craft a policy that says, hey, your memoirs are not allowed, they're licentious and practically porn, there are no LGBTQ memoirs allowed.
That's not
That is
what
erasing
anyone has said,
an individual's
actually.
history.
But hey,
It is erasing the kinds of stories I wish, going to that 14-year-old
you're
and
preventing
saying,
me
hey,
from
we can
writing a
make it to the other
memoir.
side.
No, we're not.
That's what memoirs allow people. It allows them to see themselves. When you erase an LGBTQ person's history, you're robbing them and you're robbing the youth's future. Collectively, when you ban drag, you are banning an art form that is deeply connected to what it means to be queer in this country. When you look at Stonewall and that, you go back to 3 articles of clothing laws and strict, rigid policing of gender expression through clothing. That art form is tied to our history. And when the representative who brought that ban on drag stood up, and one of the questions he asked is, he said,
I was
no
thinking
one
the
can
same
give me
thing,
a good
Danielle. I
answer
was thinking
why
that
kids
too.
are going to drag shows. And I stood up on the floor and I said, your answer is because we lived. We lived through effort.
Wait, what? What? That's your answer for like, hang on, we need to watch that again. Why are kids going to drag shows? The answer is because we lived. What the fuck does that even mean? Why do kids need to go to drag shows?
That art form is tied to our history. And when the representative who brought that ban on drag stood up, and one of the questions he asked is, he said, no one can give me a good answer why kids are going to drag shows. And I stood up on the floor and I said, your answer is because we lived. We lived through efforts to eradicate us. We lived to the point where we were allowed to get married and have families. And now we have children of our own. We are accepted by our communities and they have children, and they are sharing in an art form that helps explain our past and our community to them. That is why, because we lived. We also have seen bills targeting our present. Obviously, things like bathroom bans, bills that ban government documents, make it hard to exist in public life, to access jobs, to just feel comfortable out in the world. We also see attempts banning our futures. And one that's near and dear to my heart is Senate Bill 458 in Montana, was a bill that tried to misdefine sex. They tried to define sex as binary in a way that wound up excluding trans, intersex, two-spirit, non-binary people again and again. And there was a section in that, they updated 40 different sections of code. And one of the sections was on interment after death. And the way the policy was written, I'm thinking about my life. I'm married, not quite yet. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman, Erin. And she has a son, and I have a stepson now. And I hope after a long life, my tombstone reads something along the lines of, here lies Zooey Zephyr, beloved wife, beloved mother, etc., etc. The state of Montana says that's fine and dandy, but in the back of this, we're going to erase all of that and say M, male. That is the erasure of a future. And then there's no more clearer example of erasing a future, of banning the healthcare trans people need. I spoke out on Senate Bill 99 multiple times in committee. I spoke out against it on the House floor when it came through the first time. I spoke out, and that time I gave a speech not to the other legislators, but to the camera. And what I said was, please stay alive. I said, we are going to make it through this. We are going to beat these in the court. We are winning in the court of public opinion. And eventually, someday, after we drag this old institution called our legislature, kicking and screaming, we will win in these halls as well. And then the bill went to the Senate and passed, and then it was amended by the governor. And the governor of Montana does line item amendments and changes some definitions and things that he wanted, let's get some more specificity to the cruelty. And then, right, yeah, woo. But governor's amendments also come with letters, the sort of cover letter explaining the changes. And the governor's amendment said two things in particular. First, it said trans people deserve our compassion and respect. And the second thing it said is gender affirming care is, quote, Orwellian newspeak. And I got up on the House floor and I said, trans people do not need your compassion and respect. We need the healthcare that allows us to live our lives. I then told a story and said, listen, if you are forcing a trans teen to go through puberty that they were assigned at birth, and they know they are trans, if you're forcing them to go through their birth puberty, that is tantamount to torture, and the body should be ashamed. At which point the speaker said, this body will not be made to feel shame. And I responded saying, then I hope you see the blood on your hands. We saw that totality of the attacks. So in the face of that, and in the face of the cruelties that came in the expulsion, how do you feel hope? For me, that came from the response. You know, it's easy to see cruelty and the things people are willing to do, and more importantly, as I'll talk about, what they are willing to throw away to accomplish that cruelty. But I also got to live the response from folks. And one of my favorite things to talk about is the moment this happened, there were two groups who stood up in support. The first group was my union, the Public Employees Union of Montana, MFPE. My union said, we've got your back, and it's not an accident we've got your back, because unions recognize the way those in power will leverage every tool at their disposal to cause harm and be left unaccountable. The second group that stood up was the American Indian Caucus in Montana. In the first rules meeting, Representative Stuart Paraguay of Montana called it pretty plain, said, trans people may be the target of this legislature today, but we're not fooled. We've seen renditions of these attacks again and again and again, and I will tell you, my community sees them for what they are, the road to fascism. That is what she said.
Oh, snaps.
Those, yeah, indeed. That is a community response immediately in the moment. I also saw the way people rallied around in the building. Many people likely saw this, but I sat on a public bench outside of the room. And the first thing that happened is the speaker came and said, you can't sit on a public bench. And he had the great insight to do that while the Associated Press was filming me. And I was like, okay, before God and the camera, tell me again, the public bench? And his response to that was not to go oopsie doopsie. He said, I've got a more clever strategy. Tomorrow, instead of telling her she can't sit there, I'll send my mom an hour early. And the next day he sent his mother and several legislators' wives to sit on that bench. Now, when I talk about cruelty, I think you cannot control the cruelty. You can control your response, and you can control the way the cruelty is revealed. And throughout the legislature, what we were trying to say and what happened with a lot of the protests is people said, yes, she stood up on a bill about LGBTQ rights. Yes, that mattered. But when you actually are being silenced in the legislature, that's not about LGBTQ rights inherently at that point. It's actually about democracy. It's about if we send elected representatives to speak on our behalf and they're not able to, do we have democracy?
I kind of agree with her on this. I have to be honest. I think this is a
it's why
bad
often when I
strategy.
spoke with Representative Justin Jones, Justin Pearson,
You don't get the
and Gloria
high road
Johnson
when
in
you do this
Tennessee,
shit.
we were having the conversation of saying, I see the parallels here. What's happening is when people in power, it's no longer enough for people in power to say, oh, we can get the policies across. It's saying we need to silence the dissent entirely, and when people hold us accountable, we'll do everything in our power to get rid of them. That's often why I say, again, Not what are the policy questions that we're debating. It's what are people willing to throw away to achieve those policy goals. It becomes a huge concern. The third thing that I find to be a sort of well of hope in terms of the response is larger community responses. And yes, that can mean my community of Missoula, places like this, overwhelmingly supportive. I won my district with 80% of the vote. I was going home to people who understood the urgency of the fight. But that is not the extent of the support. When you attack our fundamental democratic institutions, people across all walks of life recognize that. I was checking into a hotel about 3 weeks after everything went down, and it was midnight, and I was just sleepy as heck. And all of a sudden, the security guard looks over and just starts sidling. And I'm looking over, and he gets real close to me, and he just leans over and whispers, "The National Guard has your back." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." It's like a strange thing to hear at 12:10 in the morning, but thank you so much. Like, yes. And then one of my favorite stories to tell about this is in June, I went to Glacier National Park in Montana with my fiance. Glacier National Park, sorry, it's very beautiful out here. I'll be biased. Glacier is the prettiest place in the whole damn country. Incomprehensible verticality. And what happens in a place like Glacier, it was my fiance's first time. And what happens when it's someone's first time at Glacier is you pull off on the side of the road, because every 500 feet, it's the prettiest thing you've ever seen. And we pulled off on this one stop, and we look at this beautiful waterfall, and up comes behind us an F-250. And out of it hops this larger mid-50s dude. He's got the boots, the Wranglers, the plaid. If the NRA magazine had stickers on the inside, he'd have been, complimentary. And he walks up and he goes, "Zooey Zephyr," and just what's first words out of his mouth, pointing at me. I was like, okay, 200 miles from any civilization, like, ready, let's go. This is politics. Let's do the conversation. Let's have it. And he goes, "Before we get into anything, I want you to know I'm a Republican." And I was like, context clues, like I get it, like I followed the, and he goes, "But I'm not like them." And I went, "Say more." He goes, "I'm more of a, John McCain." And he listed some moderates in the Republican Party in Montana. Again, moderates in the Republican Party in Montana. And he said, "That's kind of my speed." And he goes, "But I want you to know, you're my hero. I'd have sat on that bench for you."
Bullshit.
And so we
Things that
sat
never
on the side
happened.
of this road
Things that
for
never
15 minutes,
fucking
and we
happened,
talked
Zooey.
policy. And we talked the things.
Bullshit.
I asked the same question that I had asked on the thousands of doors I knocked during my campaign. What is it Montana could do better at? What's in your heart?
Let's wait for the
Mayor? If
Q&A,
you had a magic wand,
Rottweiler.
what would you fix?
Q&A.
And we sat and we talked. And we obviously talked shop about, property taxes and the impacts of that, ag land, etc. But by and large, what we talked about was bullies, cruelness, and the frustration with that. When you send people to govern, what do you do when the people you sent there bully communities and coalesce power? How do you respond to that? That's something that gives me hope, seeing the breadth of that response where I go. And it's probably an important moment to stop in this and talk about hope. I know we're in Dickinson land, hope is a thing with feathers, et cetera, et cetera. I think John Green made a beautiful TikTok about it at some point. We got the Green fans. Yeah, love it. I'm proud to report Hank Green is my constituent. So yeah, love it. But for me, when I think about hope, I gave a speech in San Francisco talking about hope, and someone stood up in the Q&A section and said, "Hope is meaningless. Hope gets us in trouble. Hope placates us." To which my response was, "Oh, no. We're talking about two different things. Hope is a fuel you burn through. Like, hope is not a laurel you sit on or something you're just, oh, thank goodness I've got this hope. It's a resource, and you need it to keep going. When I ran for office and I asked that question about, is this a room I can be in? He said, yeah, it is. And what we talked about is sort of the two sides of this. What are the things on the outside that you want to do? What are your policy goals that you want to accomplish in the room? And what is the inextinguishable thing inside you that when it gets hard, you won't stop? And to me, that is the hope. That's something that I hold on to there. Now, it's all lovely and dandy to say, we've got this, hope is a feel, hope is da-da-da. What do you do with that? How do you build that? And for me, one of the things that, I get here a lot from folks, especially young folks, is I want to do good, I want to do this, but like, I couldn't do politics. Like, I couldn't do what you do in that room. And I always like to pause and say, I am in a room where laws get written. It is an important room to be in. And I am blessed in this moment to be invited into a lot of rooms like this one, interviews and stuff where I can have these conversations. But the reach that I have, whatever it was, would not be as much of an impact as every individual in every room that they are in standing up. So I often tell folks, it's not about finding the room that I'm in or how do you get there. It's where is your voice needed? Where can you get in? And when I started that activism work, I had a co-activist. And the co-activist often said, we often joked that our roles together was she would kick the door down and then I would convince you that you invited us in. Politics is a little bit like that by yourself. You have to kick the door in and be like, hey, thank you for the invite. It was so lovely. I'm glad we could sit down and have this conversation. But also, to get there, you have to do a lot of other types of community work and care work. And so
Care work,
I often, when I
socialist.
talk about that work and that care, I frame it as what I would call concentric circles of care. Circles within circles within circles. The first circle is that inextinguishable fire. It's the part of you that has to go home at the end of the night and say, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I stand for. I did damn good today, or I got it wrong, but you know what? We can do better. You got this. That has to exist, because no matter what you want to do in the world, if you can't stand tall at the end of your day, I'm not going to say don't have imposter syndrome. We've all got it. I've got it. But if you can stand tall at the end of the day, proud of who you are, that is needed. The second circle is not even activist community, but just who is going to uplift you? Who is going to hold you at the end of the day when you're not able to stand tall by yourself? After that, you start getting into the community work. Who are the organizations doing the work on the ground? Who do you want to be involved with? Where are the rooms that your voice is needed in? Once you find that and you've got those spaces, beyond, you start looking for the other circles surrounding you. It is not an accident that the fight for trans rights was integrally connected to the fight for abortion access in this country.
Oh!
And the people working.
Oh! What have I been telling you guys? What did I say when, hang on, let me get this up on my Substack for people who may have missed it. We're going to take a brief time out. I wrote about on my Substack. No shit. Really? Where? Where, Andrew? Let me know. Thank you for the update. I wrote about this on my Substack after the election a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, whenever that was. In Ohio, when they passed that constitutional thing where they made abortion like available without limits in Ohio by constitutional mandate, what they also did in that same measure was basically sign away parental rights, because the same issue that they voted on for the abortion stuff can also be applied to trans kids seeking medical care. And what I said when was that if Republicans understood that socialists, when they speak about abortion, they speak about trans care for kids in like literally the same sentence almost every single time, they would understand that that abortion bill was not just about abortion. The wording is kind of like there's other duties as assigned in the bill. You can go read about it on my Substack. But like the reason is that every single time these people craft a measure in relation to like reproductive justice or abortion, they're also doing it for trans kids. So have fun in the state of Ohio if you live there. Because they just voted away your parental rights a couple weeks ago, and they thought they were voting on abortion, but they really weren't. I mean, they were voting on that, but they were voting on other stuff too. And what did Zooey just say? Let's just like listen again. What did Zooey just say?
Those spaces, beyond, you start looking for the other circles surrounding you. It is not an accident that the fight for trans rights was integrally connected to the fight for abortion access in this country.
The right for trans rights is connected to the fight for abortion. There you go. Told you. Every single time the left introduces an abortion bill, they're also going to write it to apply to trans medical care and specifically for kids, because they're trying to get it in under the radar where people don't know what they're doing. All right, it looks like the shooting in New Hampshire was in Concord. In Concord. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope that I'm really sorry to hear that. That sucks. That sucks. I'm not going to say any more on that just now because I don't have anything else to say, but that sucks.
And the people working on those issues recognized it. The people attacking those issues sure as hell recognized it. I know in the intro, we talked about the Tennessee 3, about my being silenced. It's also important to recognize Representative Maury Turner in Oklahoma, first non-binary legislator out in Oklahoma, great friend. First black representative representing a non-majority black district, and Muslim representative in Oklahoma, sort of triple intersections and just getting the, you know what, kicked out of them. President's right here, I'm not going to swear. And then you also had people in Nebraska, like Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, Senator Megan Hunt, Senator John Frederickson, who filibustered the entirety of the session and said, hey, if you drop this anti-trans bill, we'll work on stuff. If you drop it, we'll work on stuff. And the right said, no, this is our number one priority over anything else. And they couldn't get it across the line until they edited it. And the title of it was like Protecting Children. And they have a single subject bill. And they said, you know what? We're going to fold something else in here. And they said protecting children means stopping trans people, but it also means stopping abortions.
Yep.
And that's how they got their bill across the line, by combining those attacks. We recognize
that's
they
the
recognize
ironclad
that.
law
We
of woke
recognize
projection.
that we also recognize in the fight for trans rights that there's another circle there, the disability community. If you are standing up and saying, hey, doctors need to believe us when we tell you.
Is this a centrist-oriented channel? Well, I'm an anarchist. So, no, I would say that this is not a centrist-oriented channel. But what I will say is it's not a tribalist-oriented channel. There are people of all different types of political beliefs on this channel. We are not in favor of tribes. We are not in favor of craziness. We are not in favor of insanity. There are all sorts of people that watch my channel of all different beliefs, and everyone is welcome. If you are against insanity, then you are welcome here.
Tell you what's going on. Well, you find very quickly that there's a lot of people who said, God, yeah, I wish my doctor would believe me when I told them what was going wrong. So we find ourselves in resonance with disability rights activists. We find ourselves in resonance with women broadly, talking about their wishing their doctors would listen to them. We find ourselves in resonance with a large swath of Black Americans who have been historically discriminated by the healthcare industry. And so that is that next layer of circle. And you find yourself, who are you in connection with? Because like we know from the union fight, as I talked about earlier, it's a lot harder to take a community down if we are standing together with a lot of communities in need. So to me, that is that work there. All of it, though, stems from that place of going home at the end of the day and being proud of who you are. And then I do want to, in sort of a pseudo close, say that I talk about kicking a door in. One of the interesting things is that you will find, if you are connected to community in that way, sometimes you go to kick a door in and there's somebody already in there opening it up for you. And if you are rooted in all the different communities doing the work, you will find doors more often than not are opened to you. That to me is the important work. And then in terms of, actually, I'm going to extend my close into another direction. I talked briefly about like finding the room that your voice can do good in. To me, there's something, I remember when I was going to college, my parents.
How do I distinguish between anarchy and insanity? Well, there's no government. So I think anyone who trusts the government to do anything is certifiably insane. I don't trust the government to do anything, which I think would lead to a far more sane society than anyone who trusts the government to save them.
Both said, find your passion. Zooey, find your passion. That's your goal. We're sending you to college. Find your passion. My dad, when he said it, meant capital P passion. What is the thing you were put on this earth to do? My mother meant it with passion, with like the S's were dollar signs. And that's not to disparage her, but it was like, find the thing that you like, that will make you money, that will allow you to live a happy life. That is your passion, because then you're not, working nonstop. You get to retire and you get to live happily. I spent my life chasing what I would call lowercase p passions, the smallest passions. And I was in a meeting in New York, and someone said, wow, you've got so much life experience. And I was like, no. I just chased a lot of little passions. I taught Lindy Hop. I taught vintage swing dancing. I spent 3 years as a competitive video game player. Let's go Super
That
Smash
explains
Brothers.
a lot.
I did an undergrad in creative writing. I was in grad school for creative writing in literature. These are all disconnected. I was working at the university. I was going to farmers markets and park cleanups and little things like that. None of those were, let me build this beautiful portfolio. I was following the things that my heart felt called to. How do you listen to that and go towards it? And what I found was, obviously looking hindsight is 2020, but what a literary criticism master's allows you to do. I was studying technology in the Middle Ages, the integration of technology and humanity in the Middle Ages. And if you are reading, doing a lit crit master's, you are reading dozens and dozens and dozens of different essays and trying to find connections. And you're reading them often in Middle English. And there is no law that is too incomprehensible. If you can read Middle English, it all feels super easy. And then you also begin to recognize patterns. The way Lit Crit felt like that was an important step for me to say, okay, I see the way parental rights shows up on 9 different bills, all disconnected. I see the way parental rights suddenly vanishes when it's the parental rights of someone who affirms their trans child. We can talk.
Parental rights for you means you need to accept the parental rights of other people. This is just I kind of joined this podcast last night, just like impromptu. Just like this guy like DM me the link. He's like, "You want to come on and chat?" And I was like, "Fine." And we were talking about how like I was basically talking about how like all the crazy stuff going on. He was a school teacher, and he was telling me about how like he is required by school policy to use the name and pronouns that students want to use, even if parents are sitting right there and the parents are like, that's not their name, that's not their pronouns. The teacher can't do anything about it. They have to follow the school policy or they lose their job. And he was talking about like the tension between that. And I said, that's an attack on parental rights, which is an attack on the family, and yada, yada, yada. And we started getting into a conversation about parental rights. But what Zooey just said, and I want to emphasize this, is like, if like it is critical to protect parental rights in this country, because the left is making a lot of really concerted attacks on parental rights specifically. And if parental rights fall, that means the nuclear family falls, which means capitalism falls. So we need to protect parental rights at all costs. But what conservatives need to hear is that parental rights for you also means parental rights for other people. And sadly, it means that lefty parents have the right to raise their kids and do whatever they want in terms of giving the kids the trans care that they are demanding. You have to allow that to happen. Andrew, we're not going to debate this anymore right now because that is going to distract from the stream that we're doing. So I'm going to ask you to focus in. If you want to ask me questions about my political beliefs, you can do it another time, bro. You can send me in a super chat. You can do whatever. We're not going to debate this right now. So chill the fuck out. If you want to be able to raise your kid the way you want to be able to raise them without the school interfering, without the state taking them away, if you don't give them the cross-sex hormones, then you need to concede that some lefty parents are going to give their kids the cross-sex hormones, are going to trans the kids, and that's just going to be the way it is. It is not your job to protect other people's children. Oh, Andrew, we were having such a nice chat, and now you're going to be banned on my channel. GTFO, bro, go away. Conservatives always come in and ruin shit every single time. You ask them not to distract from you from the conversation that's happening, and they swear at you and call you names and call you fat and ugly, because conservatives just can't help themselves but to fuck every single thing up, which is why they lose over and 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 over again every single time. Why no one wants to vote for conservatives, why conservatives lose every fucking election. Too bad. Anyway, this is something that conservatives need to accept, that there are going to be lefty parents who trans their kids, and you can't save them, and that's just the way it goes.
Talk about that connection and call it out. And importantly, when it comes to calling it out, I felt like my creative writing degree helped, because that was something that allowed me to talk about narratives. How do you take information and find the story behind that information? Because if you're trying to explain to a community, hey, there's a lack of action on property taxes in the state of Montana, and the Democrats proposed a circuit breaker. I noticed everyone was very excited about the circuit breaker. Exactly. You have to find a way to narrativize it. You have to find a way to package it in somehow so people can understand it. Those allow you that. Something as silly as spending a couple years playing a professional video game shifts the way you think about intellectual property law and right to repair laws in our country. Bit by bit by bit, all those lowercase p passions become a life you are proud of and a litany of experience that you can take with you into whatever room you go into. So I hope you find your capital P passion. I hope you find the one with the dollar signs. Woohoo. I certainly did not find that. State legislators do not get paid. But more importantly, I hope you find the room that you feel like you need to get into. I hope you can kick the damn door down. And when you get in, I hope people understand that they should have been inviting you in all along. Thank you so much.
Look at the audience. Look at the audience. Look at the audience. Mask, mask, mask. Any other mask? Mask over here, I think. Mask, mask. Socialists still wear masks because socialists still believe that the pandemic is a real thing and that masks will help them. They really do believe that. All right, looks like we're moving into the Q&A now. Zoe's speech up until this point been a little lackluster. We learned a thing or two. That's always fine. But the Q&A portion is always the best part because it's the part that they don't script out beforehand. So hopefully we'll get Zoe to say a couple more quiet parts out loud. Guys, please do mount that like button if you have not mounted the like button already. I do appreciate it. Oh, getting a standing ovation. Oh, that's nice. Standing ovation. All right. There is a Q&A though. I don't know why the sound just got crazy, but there is a Q&A. They just screwed up the sound. It's some weird thing now.
Thank you, everybody. I
Oh, there we
believe,
go.
I don't want to speak after a beautiful close, but I believe we're going to do a Q&A now, which is my favorite part, personally.
It's our favorite part too, Zoe. Thank you. Hopefully the volume still holds up. Please, God, please.
Thank you
Right on
so
time.
much.
Does this person have a
thank
beard?
you, Representative Zephyr.
No, no. Does this person have a beard? Yo, this is going to be great.
For sharing your thoughts with us. I'm so moved and led by all you've shared with us today. My name is Teal Van Dyke. I'm an interdisciplinary artist and educator, local gender alchemist, and current director of accessibility here at Hampshire College.
What?
And I'm honored to moderate today's Q&A. Before we begin, I wish to extend my personal gratitude in memory of Iqbal Ahmad and his family and friends who have joined us today. As an alumni and staff member of the college, this is my 17th Iqbal Ahmad lecture, and I've been moved and led deeply in my own political formation by this lecture series over the years, as well as by Ahmad's life and legacy.
Hey God, I'm sorry. I need to take a picture. I need to take a picture of like you need to find like the best possible. Hang on.
I've been moved and led deep.
There we go. What is happening right now? What the fuck? I've never actually encountered a person like this out in the wild. We've never seen this on Happy Hour before. The bearded woman has entered Happy Hour. Oh no, I feel like such a dick, but hey God, I need to tweet this. Everyone take a break and go get another drink. If anyone's drinking anything fun, let us know in the chat. My Twitter is going to take like 18 hours to actually be able to post what I want to post because it's just the way it goes when I'm streaming. I need a new computer. It is what it is. Hang on. Load. Load, you fucker. Seriously. Oh, okay. The bearded lady has entered the stream. All right. I feel like I'm going to go to hell for this particular comment, but it had to be done. It had to be done. All right. Let's continue.
Deeply in my own political formation by this lecture series over the years, as well as by Ahmad's life and legacy. Now more than ever, I invite us to turn to Iqbal's writing and to his work as we ask questions about how to move together into the future we are building out of the challenges that we face.
KB for me says, by showing me these things, you are forcing me into Don Julio's warm embrace. This is why this is happy hour, KB for me. I have a beer. I'm getting pretty close to finishing it, which means I get to pour another one. Cheers. Happy Friday.
And Representative Zephyr, I know that we've both worked as university administrators. Woo! Oh, radical stuff, folks, yeah. But it can be. And I wanted to, this copy of Iqbal's writing has lived in my office as I've worked with students over the years, and I wanted to offer this to you as a souvenir of your time with us and as a chance to connect with his writing and his life more deeply as you go on.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So in the spirit of these questions, we reach our own time of questioning here in our Q&A. Here's how this is going to work. Today we are gathering your questions for Representative Zephyr using a digital tool Menti. And Taylor, thank you for your work to help set this up. We have questions that have already come in from folks in the room, from folks online. And I think we'll put that QR code back up if you are thinking of questions as those percolate. And then after I ask Zooey a few questions that I've come prepared with, I'll try to gracefully weave questions from folks in the room and on Zoom as we go through our Q&A. So, as you mentioned in your lecture, I was really moved in preparing to speak with you today by the thousands of doors you've knocked on in Montana. And by, I know that as you knocked on those doors, there must have been so many moments of taking a deep breath for the conversation in the doorway that was about to happen. These moments of connection with who knows who might be behind door number 1 or 2 or 6,000. And I also am thinking about a quote in an interview with LGBTQ Nation about the power of trans love, where you said, and I quote, "There's this inclination to see the bills that are coming, what they're trying to take away. And it's important to say, hey, the thing you can't take away is that I love myself deeply and I love my partner. And that joy and that love, if we center that, that's the most important thing. Why would I want to back away from that in the slightest?" End quote.
Good quote.
So great quote, I thought. And it really resonated with me as somebody who has been deeply carried by the power of trans love into
the power
being and
of
into living
trans
and into
love
loving in the communities that I have the privilege to serve in my own life. I wondered if you'd tell us more about what you've noticed after all those doorway conversations. How does that spirit of trans love, that possibility of connection, propel you as you keep knocking on the doors of justice?
So, to speak very directly about the trans joy, one of the questions that I get very frequently is, how would you define queer joy?
Mm.
And my
Queer.
answer to that is queer joy is the things they cannot take away.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is a love of myself. That is a love of my partner. That is a love of my community in Missoula. That is the dancing that I get to do. That is that vast array of things. And so when you talk about carrying that joy with you, I looked at, and my fiance and I have differing views on this, but I have said, these bills can do a lot of things. They can separate families. They can remove healthcare. They can block us from jobs and opportunities, but they will not make me hate myself. And quite frankly, they will not make me afraid. Like, I will stand in those halls and say, you could try to do a lot of things, but I'm sure as hell not going to cower out of this room. That is not for everybody, but that has been my answer. And so it's also important that that's an answer I've come to in a long time, being very vulnerable. When I was loved and supported by Missoula. When I first went to knock doors, I lived on a 2nd-story apartment, and I left my house on December 26th to 27th. And I walked down the stairs and I sat on the bottom stair, and I just started crying before I knocked a single door because I was scared. I said, it only takes one person. It only takes one person to see me and have a conversation about trans rights, and suddenly the first trans candidate is gone. You don't know. I was scared. And it was I talked about those circles of care. It was through my community who came and said, we got your back if you need help, speaking to representatives who'd been elected and talked about the experience, where you sort of take that inhalation and go. And what I found in the doors was what I had found broadly in the community: love and support. That the rhetoric that the right tried to push was not the reality of my community. It was not when I say, what can Montana do better at? It didn't matter if it was a lifelong Republican or a leftist. They were saying, oh, here's the things that I care about. And, remember some old guy up there being like, Zooey Zephyr, reading trans candidate, CZ Top. It's easy. And you're like, yes, that's perfect. Like that's the
Thanks for
weird little
that.
line you're gonna go for. And he's like, where's your beard? And I was like, I got rid of it. And he's like, ha. And off we go. That's the conversation. He's not looking to hurt a queer person. And so finding like that community was part of that. And then the second part is you quickly find that your community is actually full of experts. You know, there are people there who you knock a door and someone's like, oh, hey, I install solar panels. And I'm like, oh yeah, energy, solar, let's talk about clean energy. And he's like, yes, but actually let's talk about how solar installation forces local union jobs to exist because they have to be repaired and installed and all of that work. And suddenly you're going to a next door and you're talking to someone who does work on housing policy and how they can try to shift policy to get solar installed. And you start to build policy understanding, not through your own brilliance, but through listening to community. And the more you do that, the easier it is to knock a door and be like, oh, what expert am I going to meet today? Let's roll the dice.
Thank you. You have spoken about your journey through policymaking. And I know that in your platform, I really see the way you've taken that experience of talking to your constituents, of talking to so many people, asking them these questions, what can we do better? And translated that into a platform really focused on the practical needs of the people, healthcare, housing, human rights, and beyond. And isn't it exciting in these moments of escalating political, environmental, economic crisis manufactured for profit? It's so thrilling to be labeled a radical for carrying a message of basic rights and shared survival.
What did I just hear that made me stop? Does anyone know? Pop quiz for the chat. What did I just hear that made me stop? Let me see how closely people are paying attention. Someone mentioned earlier they hadn't mentioned capitalism yet. They just did, but not directly. Did anyone else hear that? For profits. 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 Exactly. Because the reason that socialists want to abolish capitalism is because they believe that the profit-making incentive is what leads to essentially like unethical behavior that causes human oppression. So let's listen to that again.
Of talking to so many people, asking them these questions, what can we do better? And translated that into a platform really focused on the practical needs of the people, healthcare, housing, human rights, and beyond. And isn't it exciting in these moments of escalating political, environmental, economic crisis manufactured for profit? It's so thrilling to be labeled a radical for carrying a message of basic rights and shared survival. And at the same time, I think of this image that we may have seen of this sort of watershed moment on the floor of the Montana State House, where you're raising the mic above your hand on your heart, sort of Statue of Liberty incarnate, if you will.
Very kind.
In my heart. And to me, this is a radical moment. This is a moment of, we see your connection with the people reflected in a different way than the policy making. And I wonder what you've noticed so far about finding that balance to serve the people in these different ways.
So, people often have folks say, well, it must have taken a lot of courage to stand up on the floor. And I was like, actually, it was the easiest thing I've ever done, because there are often times when you're having policy conversations where there's not 100% right answer. You have to hit a green button or a red button at the end of the day, but you're like 60-40. Oh, this film tax credit, like it's bringing industry into Montana, but also, it's going to cause a housing crunch. We haven't really solved that. Like at the end of the day, I'm about 55 no, 45 yes, but then you have to hit the no button. There was a moment in that protest where it was so clear what the moral and just thing to do was, to stand alongside people fighting for democracy. So you do that work and you recognize the ease of that moment and you deal with the fallout later. You say, I will stand for what is right in this moment. And then it is a lot easier to have courage when it's like, what's the courage to respond to what happened, as opposed to the courage to, I don't know, wait for polling and see that the polling is 49-51 and then make a decision. You do what's right. You lead with that. And then in terms of the policy side of things, it's important to note, like, I didn't stop working on policy just because there were far right folks who did not like us. There's two sort of stories about this that I love. The first of which is there was a bill that was brought by a Democrat about banning robot murder police dogs, for lack of a better term. Neat.
Seems right.
Yeah. Well, the bill had some issues because when he brought it, it said no individual can have these things, but government entities, including police, can, is what the bill said. So I went to the far right and I said, isn't it a shame that the government doesn't want you to have your personal robot murder police dogs?
Yes, good
And they
idea.
went, yeah, if I want to hunt with a murder robot, I should be able to hunt with a murder robot. And I said,
Goddamn
and
right
the
they did.
government sure as hell shouldn't have access to him. And we killed that bill. so we have to get a chance to go do it again in a different year. But even from the like far right
It's a
and
good
me
tactic.
personally, you know, there was someone in the far right who was on the contingents, you know, in the letters misgendering me regularly, who behind the scenes would say, "Stay strong, sister," every time, would gender me correctly every time. And I had to call her out for her votes for why the hell are you signing this letter? You know better than that. But then also, when I brought housing policy, that was one of the only tenants' rights bills to make it through the House, which said, if a landlord is going to change the price of your rent, rather than 30 days notice, they need to give you 60 days notice because it takes a hell of a lot of time to figure out how to land into a new home. And she stood up and said, I want to thank Representative Zephyr for bringing this. Like, this is great policy. There was someone who was a very like borderline white nationalist who stood up in support of this policy because of the relationships we built. Also, there was a woman in the Republican Party who every weekend would go speak to her QAnon constituents and craft whatever wild things. She was one of the only people to vote in support of a bill that said, if you have had any vaccinations, you cannot donate blood. That bill failed. She got up and talked about the way the blood had changed. The president of the Red Cross said, please don't do this. You'll kill so many people if you ban 90% of donations. She came every day in a beautiful dress and a beautiful little matching hat that was in honor of her late mother, who wore hats all the time. And every day for the first 3 weeks of the legislature, I complimented her on her beautiful outfit, her shoes, the matching hat, the jewelry that she wore, and she would compliment me. And we just had a fun little time talking about how beautiful our outfits were. At the end of the third week, you know, and one of the
Yeah, I mean, Jeff is making a great point. I like a lot of what Zoe's saying. I like a lot of what Zoe's saying as well, if I'm honest about it. And this is why you always watch people in their full form, guys. I'm going to tell you what, Zoe is absolutely a socialist, but Zoe's a very effective, like, communicator. And sometimes, you know, when you listen to people, you find out that they're not actually as bad as you think they are, which I do think is an important thing to know. Do I think that Zoe would advance like crazy leftist stuff? Yes. Am I that worried about that? No. And I'll tell you why. Zoe lives in Montana. And although there are absolutely efforts to do far left outreach in red states, I don't see Montana turning anytime soon. And I like that Zoe's reasonable. I like that Zoe's making conversation with people across the aisle. Maybe she goes to Hampshire College and she calls them white nationalists, which probably is not their position. But I like that the effort is being made. I like that she's not really demonizing in this talk. There are definitely worse people out there. We've seen worse people out there. Now, it's not to say we're not going to listen to the rest of this talk and talk about what she's saying, but I'm not necessarily anti-Zoe at this point. I'm really not. I'm sorry if that pisses people off, but now the bearded lady, on the other hand, I have questions about the fucking bearded lady, but It is what it is.
Thing, and so just to note, she's not just a random legislator. She pre-filed bills, 6 of which were targeting the trans community, including a bill that was chromosome testing at birth. This is someone who I did not come into the building and say, battle lines are drawn, we're not talking. I was nice to her every day. At the end of the 3rd week, she met with me on her way out.
Wait, I have very exciting news. I didn't expect this. This is breaking news, breaking news. I've just opened the second beer, which is the out of order beer. You guys are going to die. I was not expecting this. You guys are going to die at the color of this beer. Wait for it. It's a Groiper beer. It's a green beer. Look at that. I didn't know it was going to be green. They should have put that on the can. That would have been a selling point. It matches the shawl I'm knitting. Cheers, everyone. Happy Green Beer Friday. It's really good. It's like when I drank the blue milk beer. What a nice surprise.
And stopped with one of the trans lobbyists and said, "Can we talk about trans stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." And we talked for an hour. At the end of the hour, she said, "Zooey, I don't understand this stuff, but I don't want to hurt you. I don't think I'm going to run my bills." And I said, "Okay." And then the weekend passed and Monday showed up and she said, "Zooey, I prayed on it and I need to do right by you. I'm not going to vote on these." She voted for
Oh, wait, you guys can't see what's going on. Sorry. My bad. I was like fucking around with my beer, not paying attention to the fact that I took the thing off the screen. My bad. My bad. Let's rewind. I was like listening. Yeah, thank you guys. I made it. I made it. Okay, let's keep going. Sorry.
For an hour. At the end of the hour, she said, "Zooey, I don't understand this stuff, but I don't want to hurt you. I don't think I'm going to run my bills." And I said, "Okay." And then the weekend passed and Monday showed up and she said, "Zooey, I prayed on it and I need to do right by you. I'm not going to vote on these." She voted for every anti-trans bill, but she did not run her 6. That's moving the needle. That is what representation gets you. That is having the courage to talk to someone who, by and large, does not recognize your full humanity in their votes.
Thank you. I'm thinking this week of the State House protests from the spring, as we see images, videos coming through of yesterday, thousands of Jewish Americans gathered in the nation's capital, organizing with Jewish Voice for Peace, and If Not Now, to peacefully protest in solidarity with the people of Palestine. Hundreds gathered in the US Capitol, singing together, facing arrest, chanting, "Ceasefire now, no genocide in our names." I'm reminded of the potential of a democracy of shared refusal to dehumanize a perceived other, refusal to remain desensitized to, as Iqbal said, the pathology of power. I'm wondering if you would tell us more about what you've noticed about, as we enter the halls of government peacefully, accused of insurrection, how do we keep our imagination, endurance to speak truth to power?
Wow, that is maybe the best question I've ever gotten.
Thanks.
I was driving, I was in a car with someone on the way over here from my last event in Cambridge, and I was working on drafting a statement around Israel-Palestine. And so it's been on the top of my mind lately. And I kept thinking at the beginning, you stood up there and you gave this really moving land acknowledgement. And what was sitting in my heart was, God, I hope we never see a day where Israel is giving a land acknowledgement about, what happened generations back to Palestine and the cruelty there, and saying like, it's easy to look at a moment in history removed from it and say, the way the American government treated the Native Americans of this land was wrong. How do you sit with something in the moment where in a moment there's violence, in a moment there are atrocities, multifold atrocities. How do you sit with that in a moment and say, yeah, but by and large we have to recognize an apartheid state when we see it, we have to recognize occupied land when we see it? And how do you have the courage to stand up? And speaking at Harvard yesterday, there is a truck outside of Harvard with students' faces who went to a pro-Palestine protest, doxing them. There are several people who have had their law firm offers rescinded. How do you, in this moment, have what does it mean to have strength in this moment? And the answer is much like that answer around courage. Is if you stop and think, like, what does it mean to be courageous in this moment? What does it mean? What are the fallouts? Like, what happens if in some way you've already lost a little bit, because it becomes harder and harder to speak up. And so to me, you take the action first and you deal with the fallout second. And there's sort of a coda to that. I did a business undergrad degree, and I had an accounting professor. And he would say again and again and again, at some point in your life, someone is going to ask you to do the wrong thing for the right reason. They are going to give you a really convincing, this is actually, a good reason why we should stand down on this. It's a good reason why you should move this bucket of money into this thing. It's not necessarily right to do that, but it's in the long run, it's for good. And I often think about that, how do you justify saying, okay, I'm going to stand up and, maybe if I stay quiet on this, like, that's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's the wrong thing to do, but maybe there's a good reason to do it. And what he kept saying is, if you do that, it becomes easier and easier to just do the wrong thing. So I think it's incumbent on us to speak up, and it's incumbent on us to do that without the fear or without the worry about the fallout.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I'm going to move to some questions from our mentee. If you have questions that are bubbling up as you hear Representative Zephyr's comments, feel free to add more questions. And I'm going to switch to my laptop here. So, let me take just a moment. We've got a couple Smash related questions, but I'm going to
Oh, those are quick. Give me a quick rapid fire Smash question. It's like an icebreaker.
Well, we'll start with, do you see connections between your experience with Smash and with your current work in the world of politics?
Yeah, actually, this is a really
We're talking about Super Smash.
But Super Smash Brothers
for those not in the know.
But actually, so another parallel to this is I was a high level athlete in high school. I was a nationally ranked wrestler prior to my transition. And one of the things that high-level athletes and high-level competitors, whether it's an e-sport or a regular sport, you have to have a short memory. You have to have a very short memory for your losses, and you have to have an even shorter memory for your victories. It would be easy to say, we held the powerful accountable, good job.
This is really good advice. This is good advice.
There's work to be done. There's policy to be crafted. There's federal policy to push on.
As I drink my green beer.
Or to say, oh, we got kicked out, or these bad bills passed. What are we going to do? Well, we turn to community care immediately. And so I think any level of competition, or honestly performance, I think music performance can also teach similar lessons, is how do you move through victory and through defeat quickly, with an eye on what comes next, and importantly, a belief that regardless of what comes next, you go into every confrontation believing you're going to come out successful. That's what matters in high-level competition, and I think it's important in our daily lives as well. Didn't expect that answer, did you? Ha ha ha!
Wow. So I'm going to summarize some of the sort of most frequently asked questions here. And, I think this may be a question that you face frequently about things that you want the young people to know as we face these times. And I'm thinking a lot lately about, you said in your lecture, it's because we survived. And I'm thinking about the backlash that we're seeing and how it's this focus on we want to protect the children unless those children are LGBTQ, unless those children are trans. And I think a lot about, as increasingly grown trans millennial in these times where I look to my ancestors, my transcestors, to those still with us and those on the other side, and I look to the youth who lead me every day. And it's an interesting moment to know that without, I think, this legacy of those of us who have said, yeah, we're here, would there be this moment of backlash, towards our youth who we're working to hold and support? So I wonder, in that context, what do you want the young people to know today?
I think, you recognize for better and worse, the cyclical nature of the fight. When they fly around the same half dozen detransitioners to come give a talk about how, they found the right path, it is a direct echo of the ex-gays being flown around and being say, well, I found the
not
Lord,
exactly.
and now I suddenly see
Not
the error of my
exactly,
wicked homosexual
Zoe.
ways.
Not exactly at all.
Those are language like groomer is a direct echo of the recruitment language that we've seen. So it's important to recognize that we've been here in the past and we've beat these bills back in the past. There's a reason they're coming after trans people by and large, and why they started with something like sports, a subset of a subset, is because they're trying to peel off people, members of the community, to go through the broad attacks more broadly. In the same way we saw limited restrictions on abortion in various states until they could build up a large enough attack on Roe. And so we see the cyclical nature of this. And then we also recognize who got us through this. By and large, it's us. It's us doing the work and in our communities. I talk about every room matters. Public opinion on LGBTQ people shifts over time. The more and more someone knows somebody. Recent polling showed 30% of Americans know trans people, and they are like double as likely to support LGBTQ policies and trans inclusionary policies if they know someone. So that makes a difference. And then you talk about our past. I remember Margaret in her opening talking about the cowboy and Indian films and saying, oh, this is the group that I align with, and talk about the presentation of an erased history. I think it's important for us in our communities to acknowledge, yes, we have a history. And obviously we can talk about Stonewall. But it's important when we talk about Stonewall, like you've seen the pictures with the bricks thrown and all of that. If you also, there are photos of the next day of them all in front of the building, smiling, happy. There's joy there. When we think about the fights, through the AIDS epidemic, it was largely an act up. It was, radicals pushing back against the government that seemed not to care about us. And there was a lot of folks in the lesbian community who were there hand in hand with the gay community, supporting one another. You go farther back in time, you look at the early 1900s, we have folks like Lucy Anderson, who was a Black trans woman out in California, who at the age of 6, her parents brought her to the doctor and said, she's wearing, girl's clothes and she says she's a girl, and what do we do, doc? And the doctor said, she ain't hurting nobody, like let her be, let her live her life. And she did. And she was supported and cared for by her community. She became this well-known chef. And it was found out later in her life that she was trans, and they arrested her. And the response was a bunch of the elite from the city came and protested at the jail and said, that's the best party thrower in town. That's the best chef in town. Give us our chef back. And she was released and went back to that community. So we have that. If you go back even farther, the earliest writings like Elagabalus and the priestesses of Inanna were supporting trans women.
Let's go all the way back.
Let's go
Representative
all the
Zephyr.
way back.
Yes.
Like, yes. And so what I want the youth to know is like that history exists, and it exists in layers of, erasure, both from, the focus in the moment, the cruelty of the moment, efforts to, forcibly remove histories like, our books and our art forms, but also just a lack of knowledge about, what is buried in our history, not just the struggle, but the successes and the joys. So that's what I want you to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're reaching the end of our time for today, but I
Zoe
want to ask
hasn't
you
said
one more
anything
question.
crazy, and I'm really perturbed by
We've got
this.
a lot of questions coming through from Zoom and from folks in the room about, these themes that you've brought us through in your story of working on the outside, the work of activism, of pushing upstream, the work of working on the inside, those who might be interested in serving legislatively and investigating the possibilities of democracy in all of its shapes, forms, and challenges. Some folks want to know what advice you would give to those who might be interested in trying to find their path in that way, and questions about how easy it is to feel a sense of hopelessness, a sense of, someone says, doomerism.
Yeah. So let me sit on three things in there. The first of which is, it is probably the most radical thing that I will say, but like, if you feel trapped by institutions, like you need people fighting from the outside and the inside. If you're trying to break out of some sort of prison, like build a tunnel from both sides, you can get there twice as fast. You need people in the system, in the halls of power fighting. But there's a reason that I'm going and talking to community activists, and I'm not saying, hey, hold up, you're making this really hard for the Democratic Party. I'm like, hell yeah, go do it. And even at college, I remember there was a big protest, and I was working in the provost's office, and the president came up and said, oh, these guys are making it really hard. Don't they recognize that like we have our hands tied by Title IX, and like we can't really investigate this unless more things come out? We can't do anything right now. Yes. And what I said is like, those students, that you want them pushing the envelope, because that's what makes it possible down the road for us to change systems and to move things. If they're not up fighting tooth and nail. And then in terms of like, if you want fighting doomerism, and if you want to get involved in office, when it comes to fighting the sense of hopelessness, I will channel my lovely therapist, who talks about the horizons. How do you bring in a horizon to the point where things are workable again? I have to work on energy policy in the state of Montana. Which is, by the way, a state that held v. Montana, the first climate case in the world where youth sued. Yeah,
That's
hell
right.
yes.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Youth sued over the legislature's failure to address climate change. They won, and one of the reasons they won is because our state Supreme Court is, to use my fiance's term, goated. And has in it a provision that says every government agency must work to maintain and enhance a clean and healthful environment. So that exists, but we're fighting energy. We're like working on energy policy. If I'm looking on like 100-year, 200-year timeline, that is just like, I will freeze, because it's horrifying to think like, oh, there's a disaster already beginning to happen. We have smoke season in Montana. There's a disaster happening. I can't think on that 200-year time scale. Bring the horizon in. What can I do now? What can I do in this legislative session? How can I move the needle here? How can I set up for 25? Or if that's too much, like, bring it in. What can I do this week? What is going on this week that I can help at? And you do that on every sort of topic, and your horizon will be different day to day, depending on your mood and where you are. It'll be different on your expertise on a topic and your fire for a topic. Maybe in your circle, you can focus 4 years out. But when it comes to another community circle, you're like, okay, you're gonna take the lead, and I can only look about, a month out. And that's what I've got energy for. You figure out what the horizons are, and do not let yourself go beyond them. If you get beyond them, apologize, like forgive yourself, reset, bring it in, and go. And then lastly, if you want to get involved in political office, put down roots in as many places in your community as possible. I cannot tell you the amount, like I, again, knocked 6,000, 8,000 doors, and the number of people who I was 1 degree removed from was enormous because I'd gone to the farmers markets and the art galleries and worked on campus and been to the bars with the grad students. And suddenly you find yourself, I'm not kidding when I say doors get opened, not because of some brilliance or this, but because you are connected to every spot in your community. Do that work. And then if you find yourself part of a community who you feel like needs additional representation that is not represented in your bodies of government, find the people doing the work. I called every trans legislator who was serving in America and said, what do I need to know? Who do I talk to? I sat down with every Democrat. I sat down with several Republicans and said, what do I need to do? What do I need to know? Had my, as they call it, the 100 cups of coffee.
This is actually a really good point, Brucey. Ironically, she'd probably be someone who would have a good conversation with me. Maybe it's worth reaching out. I mean, honestly, I'll talk to pretty much anyone. Like, I don't care. I am so like, I know this makes people angry. I'm so beyond like hating people that think differently than me. I'm just tired of it. I'm bored with it. And it's like, you want to have a conversation? I'll have a conversation, man. Why not? Let's talk about something. Why not? Anything that's not, you know, I mean, I don't know that this person would like go off of their political talking points, but maybe, I don't know.
Do that, absorb every piece of information you can, root yourself in your community, and then go and do not look down, because campaigning is one of the most like mind-melting experiences because you are sprinting. I was working 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and knocking doors from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then doing back-end work until midnight, going to bed. On the weekends, knocking doors from 11 to 7 p.m. And you're just doing that with just kind of how's the campaign going? You know, we don't have big polling. It's just kind of vibes. So you just go and have that faith, take the 100 cups of coffee and trust yourself and run. So.
Thank you so much, Representative Zephyr. Thank you to all of you here today. Thank you to those online. A few housekeeping items as we close, and then we'll give Zooey another rousing Hampshire thank you. Thank you to Margaret Cerullo, to all those who have supported this
Judy,
lecture
it's
series
clue
over the
four,
years.
finally.
To Dana Ahern, to President Wingenbach, and all those who've organized this day for us to learn together. We have a reception outside in the FPH courtyard. We're eager to chat, mingle, and say hello. Tomorrow we have a teach-in here in FPH on Israel and Palestine. It is happening at 1 p.m. Oh, good, 1 p.m. And we welcome you to come on back here and learn more. And let's share our gratitude again with Representative Zephyr. Thank you so much.
Well, I have to say, I'm a little disappointed because Zooey didn't actually say that much crazy shit. I expected significantly more crazy shit than we were gifted today. But that sometimes that's just the way it goes with happy hour. I think that the big takeaway is that Zooey is an incredibly gifted politician. And that's something you want to pay attention to. And it's one of those things that could go like one of two ways, right? Maybe she turns out to actually be a reasonable human being. Maybe she uses the gifts she has with building relationships in order to pass some crazy shit. So we need to keep an eye on her, because no matter whether she stays in the Montana state legislature, I'm sure she has her sights set on bigger things, maybe like lobbying or like activism groups or something like that. We need to keep an eye on Zooey because she could really screw some stuff up. But guys, that is all we have for happy hour today. I'm sorry I didn't have more commentary, but it was really just like one of those days where it wasn't that crazy. But I do have a green beer, and so there's that. Cheers, everyone. I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. for the second half of our 6-hour Women's Socialism Conference. Maybe I'll even go live a little bit later tonight. Who knows? Victor is off at his friend's house, and they're talking about pocket knives. They both have a pocket knife collection. And so I have the house to myself while my husband is out playing with his friends and doing manly things like talking about knives and comparing knives and fixing knives. And I don't know what else they're doing with knives, but I don't want to be involved. and so maybe I'll go live for a little bit later tonight. We'll have to see how that goes. But I'm going to take a little bit of a break for right now. Take care, guys. Have a good rest of your day. We'll see you soon. Bye.